Okay, I think we are live. I hope we are live. Yeah, we are live. Thank you. Because I completely recorded the entire video live without without the microphone being on. I'm such an idiot. But here we are once more. So basically in this video, I want to try and look into how the app router changes everything in my opinion, and I'm going to go through one by one at to what I actually think is a changing, like you can say one of the main thing that changed here. Okay, and I will like all of you to actually comment if I am wrong anywhere and correct me also, because this is a very fairly new architecture, so even I'm learning. Second, hit that like button and subscribe so that more such videos can actually come to your feed, or you can actually look forward to it, right? And let me know whether this sort of videos live is something that you guys actually want, because I'm fed up of editing the videos, and unless and until it is not something that I'm making a big tutorial out of it, I don't want to do that. Okay, but here we go. This is how the app router changes everything in my opinion. Before we actually begin the app router part, let's understand how actually the React used to work in the CSR mode. CSR basically means client side rendering, right? So imagine this is the process. By the way, I have actually went ahead and did all of this diagram live, but then everything was, nothing was being recorded in terms of voice. So anyways, here we go. When the user actually visits your page in the React CSR case scenario, what used to happen was the HTML page gets served to them by the server. That HTML page only had the div element, which is an empty element with the ID of root. Okay. And then the JS loaded on the client side, which is also something that was sent to the client and by the server, your entire React code. It loads in the client. I hope we are back, right? Okay. The disadvantage of this entire part was that there was a high load time for any person who is living in a country with slow network, right? So imagine that there's a loader which just keeps on loading on, and that means low conversion rate in any of your app which requires some sort of conversions. And second was that the SEO also used to go to toss. Basically means there was no SEO in the first place, because the robots were not able to crawl your so-called server, because the server, even though they were able to crawl, there was nothing on the server. It was just an empty div element. Okay. To fix this, there was a technique that was invented called React server-side rendering. Now, this was a technique independent of any framework like NextJS, but framework like NextJS actually made it possible to work this out of the box. Okay. That means you just install their framework and everything, the entire setup process gets taken care of by these frameworks, and the SSR works out of the box. So then the process actually changed here, right? During the build time, you can actually decide in Next.js whether you want an SSG, static site generation part, or SSR, right? What it means is whether your page will be built during the build time and it will be served as it is to the user when they request it, no matter how many users there are, or whether each request will actually run a code on the server and will send back the HTML to the user, right? Which is basically how the PHP works. So SSR is kind of like an old PHP working model, and SSG was kind of like a CDN static sending of HTML and CSS pages. The thing that Next.js actually did, apart from incorporating this, was a technique which was incorporated in the SSR scenario, which is hydration. What hydration was, that once the HTML, wonder I am back or not. Okay, so while this process used to happen, your entire app was blocked. The problem here was so I hope we are back again. So basically, till the pages architecture, what used to happen was that you and us, we all were living in this mirage that there's something called server-side rendering, when it was not the case. Even though pages were rendered there, because of the hydration process, even though there's a very small interactive part in our so-called page, the whole page used to be hydrated and the whole page was blocked from interactive, from becoming interactive, right? Because the main thread is blocked by the JS. This basically is something that the React server components, you can say, or the way the Next.js team actually inbuilt the React server component actually solved. Okay, and this is just a diagram how the things actually used to happen in the, or still happens in the pages section of pages router. Client sends the request, it gets the HTML back, and then the hydration process starts, and while this is happening, he can't do anything. Then comes the React server component. This is for the first time there's actually a server component, as in real server component rather than just a mirage in the React world. And Next.js App Router implemented this. So now what will happen is that these two server component, which do not require any sort of interactiveness, will not be hydrated on the client, which means there's now a possibility of selective hydration of just the part which requires React to make it interactable, right? And the way we actually do this is something called suspense. What you can actually do, and suspense is not actually just directly linked to it. This is an independent process of how the React server component or app architecture now works, is that components that are server components will be true server components rather than a mirage like it used to be previously. Basically, these components will never be hydrated. Okay, only the use client directive components will be hydrated. Now imagine there's a part, or there's some sort of like a part now, or some component which is very heavy loaded on the, so that's, before I go there, that's point number one. That's the advantage number one, selective hydration. Advantage number two is the suspend boundary is actually upgraded in a way that it incorporates now streaming of data. So imagine there is a component which requires a heavy lifting of data from maybe database, and that database is quite slow. What we can now do is wrap it along the suspense boundary, and the rest of the app will be loaded and will become interactive, and the user can interact with it while the data of this particular small component is being loaded. And once that is loaded, it will be streamed in that section or small part rather than the whole page reload. So that's another advantage, or you can say the way the app router actually changes this whole thing. So in app router, you can use suspense to pass. Now I think this is a little bit bad point. Basically, in app router, you can actually, by default, partial hydration is happening, right? Partial hydration is happening by default in app router. Hydration of the components, which was not possible previously, is now happening right here. Okay, this will be hydration. Then we can actually use suspense to stream the data, and have to use fallback for this. This is important. So that's advantage number two on how you can actually load a huge chunk of data in a very streaming sense. Like, and this is, everything is built out of the box in Next.js, by the way. You don't have to worry about it. And Once this data is actually loaded, the React will stream the data to the component without loading the whole page. This is the two ways in which I think you can say are built. Yeah, so that's it. And if you want anything new, let me know. I'll be talking in this channel moving forward only about Next.js, React, and everything around these two part, and maybe always in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, those basics, right? Okay, bye.